It's time for Supply Chain Now Radio, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Supply Chain Now Radio spotlights the best in all things supply chain. The people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton here with you live on Supply Chain Now. Welcome back to the show. On today's show, we're speaking with a supply chain technology leader. We're going to be discussing big data, transparency, visibility, better decision-making, sooner decision-making, you name it. So stay tuned as we look to increase your supply chain tech IQ. Two quick programming notes. First, you can find Supply Chain Now wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you name it. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Secondly, let's thank a few of our sponsors that allow us to bring these best practices and insights to you, our audience. The Effective Syndicate, Vector Global Logistics, Capgemini, ProPurchaser.com, TalentStream, and many others. You can check out each of our sponsors on the show notes of this episode. So let's welcome in my fearless, esteemed co-host on today's show, Greg White, serial supply chain tech entrepreneur, trusted advisor, and spirited lunch discussion facilitator. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah, actually, I am doing great. Hey, I want to give a shout-out to a couple folks, just real quick.
Okay.
Steve K., we're big enough now that we can't give people's full names because people can find them. And Christy B. Love our news segments. Okay. And we've, as people have probably noticed, kind of deleted those from these in the spirit of not boring our guests to tears. But because we have done that, we have told you everything that you need to know about this week's events in supply chain on Supply Chain Buzz, which is published every Monday, right? Yep. Early. How early is it? Because it's always there when I wake up.
Just after midnight.
Okay.
No. Kidding. Early morning.
Yeah.
Because it's timely. Timeliness is of the essence with that one, right?
Yeah.
Supply Chain Buzz. And its cousin series, Supply Chain Budge. Did you just launch that series?
Budge, yes. It helps you move forward in the day. So Steve and Christy, check that out, Supply Chain Buzz. Subscribe there. Subscribe here.
Yep.
For that. And that way we won't burden our guests with every single news nugget every day.
Well, with this guest here today, and we're going to welcome him in momentarily, we kind of get two episodes, one with microphones, one without. So our guest today joined us at Station Side, which is an awesome cafe here where our studio is located at King Plow in West Atlanta. And kind of unexpectedly, we all kind of met and had excellent food and retail-driven discussion.
Have to confess, that's the first time I've been recognized in public.
Well, on that note.
Thank you. You've ushered in a whole new era for
That's right.
Let's meet this cat.
That's right. So our special guest today here is Tom Jones, Regional Sales Director with Alloy. Tom, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So glad to have you here in the studio. We've had going back to a webinar we did with Alloy several years back. Y'all's firm has been on our radar, and we've really enjoyed a collaboration since that point, including a great blog article that you collaborated with Cindy
Chow. Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was well received. So it's great to have you here in the studio with us as we get to know you better, your perspective, and, of course, find out what is going on at Alloy that's driving all the growth.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so Tom, we want to start, before we start talking shop and we start talking about all the really cool things that the Alloy team is up to these days, let's get to know Tom Jones better first. So tell us about yourself, tell us about where you grew up, and be sure to give us the skinny on your upbringing.
All right. Well, I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, just on the west side in a suburb called Minnetonka. Haven't gone far from the tree there. Spent my whole life in the Twin Cities, both west and east side of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Back on the west side now. I guess, what was a little bit unique about me is I've always really been into the math, into the numbers. So I got into computers at an early age. I was part of that generation. I don't know if many people were, but
what was your first computer?
My first computer was Commodore 64.
Okay.
So that was a 64K of memory running off of floppy disks, 5 1/4-inch floppy disks.
Yeah.
It was a ton of fun. Started building them when things kind of moved over to the Intel Pentium chips. I was so excited we got our first CD-ROM. They didn't have speeds.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then they had speeds, and then they didn't have speeds anymore because it was irrelevant.
Yeah.
So we used to build computers, and then we'd have our friends over. They'd all lug over their giant monitors and big towers. And
like Will Smith from that movie. Wasn't he lugging a PC around?
Yes. Pursuit of Happiness.
Yes.
He was selling medical devices, right? Yeah.
And we'd get like 5 guys in the basement. We'd hook them all up. We'd game. It was super nerdy, and it was a ton of fun. And half the time it was just like trying to get them to work. And the other half trying to play games.
What was super nerdy then is super innovative now. I mean, you look at the folks that started in those hobbies and the huge things they're doing now, much like the Alloy team, you and the Alloy team are doing. Do you still tinker with computers and building your own stuff and all?
It's funny. In the last few years, for the first time I went in, I don't have a personal computer anymore. Right? Everything has moved in. I have a laptop for work. I have an iPad. And I can do the majority of all of my personal stuff just on my phone and my iPad.
Yeah.
So, I stumbled, a little brief departure here. I stumbled on a documentary on YouTube about fathers kind of in our general age that grew up playing video games, like in the 80s, in Nintendo Entertainment System, Sega, Genesis, all those, right? And there evidently is a very vibrant and growing community that still play those games, but they've got to build their own systems and also so their kids can play it, and they're passing it right down to their kids. Now I know, Tom, you've got 2 young children. Maybe the youngest is too early to see
maybe
how they're geared, but the 5-year-old has he displayed displayed a passion for computing or all things electronics like his father?
Oh yeah, no, he's so we travel a fair amount, and he is very excited to get on the plane because that means he gets to have a screen and he gets some screen time. So he's devoted to that, and we recently added a console to the house. So he's been playing a lot of Lego Ninja, video game. He's very into the Ninjago game. And it's amazing how quickly he went from not knowing how to use a joystick to being completely proficient with a controller. I mean, those are complicated controllers.
I'm with you. The ability to learn and apply, and that vicious cycle is so compressed with these young ones these days.
And the games are full of puzzles. Yeah. Like the speed at which he developed the ability to solve these pretty complicated puzzles on his own is astounding. So it's been really, and he can't read anything in the game,
right?
Because he's 5, so he can't. When the game's telling him something to do, he's got to figure it out on his own.
I love it.
So it's amazing.
Love it. Okay, so let's switch gears. I know, Greg, we want to kind of dive into Tom's professional journey, right?
Yeah. So you grew up. Assume you went to college. Had to get a job. So tell us a little bit about that. So tell us a bit about kind of from college and through to your professional journey until you landed at Alloy.
Sure. I'll give the cliff notes. I was super geeky, into computers, loved it. Seemed really natural to go into computer science, and I started at the computer science program at the University of Minnesota. And I quickly understood that while I did love to program, I was not nearly as good as most of the people I was in class with. And so I kind of fell into this niche around database architecture, and I got really heavy into kind of the science of information and how, specifically this concept of normalizing information so that you can manage massive sets and harmonize it, make it make sense together when you were talking about millions, billions of records of information. So I ended up focusing on data architecture. Got out of school, and one of my first jobs was actually working for U.S. Bank, where I was doing automation around pulling data from their corporate trust systems and then processing redemptions and some other things. But I was able to develop programs that automated all of this based on the data in the customer records, and I just kind of got hooked on it. So I started building in Access, started building in SQL Server, moved over, and then kind of the most relevant experience is I was at a company called Pension Software, where we had a product, Dispatch Office, that was this back-end management system as well as like a courier system that managed it would allow you to dispatch jobs, track packages, and it morphed over time into this warehouse management system. It would optimize picking and packing and routing. It's really amazing system. And while I was doing that, I started getting much more into, okay, the so what? Like, you've got all this information. What do you do with it? And I started, working more and more closely with the business teams, with the finance teams, realized I wanted to get that next layer. And so I went back to the University of Minnesota, got an MBA, really focused the MBA on finance, and came out and moved over into Best Buy. So I was on the finance team supporting the entertainment group.
Got it.
Which at the time was about a $15 billion org for music, movies, video games, musical instruments, gadgets, and e-readers.
So roughly years, what years?
So that was, that would have been 2010 to 2012.
Okay.
So I was supporting the entertainment team for not that long, but it was phenomenal because we were building out all these really robust data tools to help them with promotional forecasting, understanding things like cannibalization as we launch new products and how that affects other items in the categories, dealing with demand constraints, supply constraints, store closures due to weather events, and trying to understand every single day, okay, now this happened, what does it mean? Now this happened, what does it mean? Is this a trend or is this a blip, right? And if I pull this forward, 6 months or to the end of the year, how materially is this going to affect my top line, my bottom line? And it was just this brand new modeling exercise every day. And while I was doing that, that's when I got tapped on the shoulder and I learned about this company called Anaplan, which is where I got to spend the next 7 years of my life, which was a phenomenal rocket ship, startup out of San Francisco that has really taken the planning world by storm. And
really a platform play. I mean,
very much so, yeah.
I remember because we sort of peripherally competed with Anaplan at Blue Ridge, but really a very cool tool set in that it kind of allowed you as a individual company to take the core functionality in the data management of Anaplan and turn it into I don't want to say customized, but really kind of create an application specifically for your environment. So it was a great jumping off point.
And you could really serve sales, finance, ops, supply chain, marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a tool that really could be positioned to serve a lot of different customers within the org. Very collaborative, too.
Yeah.
So, very exciting. I got to be a part of that rocket ship. I was an early employee, 25, and then I was there until there were about 1,400 people.
Wow.
We went public. It was a great story. It was a ton of fun. I made some incredible friendships. It was an amazing story.
So what is one thing, when you're employee number 25 and it grows in short order to that magnitude, what's the one observation when I picture myself, kind of knowing what life is like in a team full of 25 folks, and then when it's overnight, 1,400 or whatever that number was. What was one takeaway from that experience, kind of seeing and being a part of that type of growth?
The thing that took me by the most surprise, I think, was that you meet some incredible people with amazing skill sets, and you find that these approaches and these skill sets tend to be suited really well for specific stages of growth in a company. There are a lot of people that like to wear a ton of hats and do really well across a broad range of subjects, but they don't want to go super deep. Whereas you have other people that they get a lot of energy out of being the best. They want to go the deepest. They want to be the expert, and they want to find those opportunities that nobody else can find. And different skill sets are needed for different stages of growth. And, what I found personally was as we grew the company, I really got a lot of energy out of that early stage. I wanted to wear a lot of hats. I wanted to be able to play in a lot of different arenas. And, the bigger you get, the more you have people specializing and focusing. And so, I started out, when I moved from, I was more of a sales engineer when I started. I moved into a field sales role. I had hundreds of accounts, and when I left, I had 3.
That's really specialized.
Yeah, it was really specialized. Really? It was a ton of fun. The customers I had were amazing customers. But, I took the leap, and I joined Alloy, and I went back to, I own half the country for the enterprise segment, and I'm doing biz dev and strategic alliances work, and I've got a seat at the table where I get to work with a lot of the other people in the company, really shaping the future. I'd lost that ability at Anaplan, and it was something I really enjoyed. So now I have an opportunity to do that again.
I thought it was really interesting, your title, because the instant question that I had was, what region? Because you're in Minneapolis, but we're in Atlanta, and this is also your region. You met with a customer before you met with us, correct? Or prospect, right? So are you basically... I mean, Minneapolis is right at the right at the beginning of the Mississippi River, so you can't even say you are Mississippi East or West because you're right there where it's a trickle, right? So, which part of the country is your part of the country?
So, I mean, it is a trickle, but we do have a really high concentration of Fortune 500 CPG.
That's
up
right.
there.
Yeah, and it's the home of the Post-it notes.
That's right. 3M. That's right. Right in our backyard.
Velcro.
Yeah, I mean, regional doesn't mean as much as it used to, right? I mean, it's sure I'm in Minneapolis, but if I were to cover Chicago or I cover San Francisco, I get on a plane and I'm there, or I'm in Chicago in an hour, or I'm in San Francisco in 3. So it's not that big of a difference anymore.
But generally, are you pretty much east of Minneapolis?
So it keeps changing. So the
Really?
faster we grow, the more we hire into the enterprise team. Obviously, the smaller the region's going to get for me.
Got it.
Right now, I'm mostly kind of north central, and then I've got pockets. We just hired a new team member, Melody, out of Philadelphia, and so she's taken more of the northeast, and we're doing some round robin on the west. I've got a lot of the west too. Until we're hired, we're going to get somebody out in San Francisco. We'll probably be in 3. I think the goal right now is to have 6 to 8 by the end of the year, and so I'll just keep getting circumscribed smaller. But I mean, it's the nature of the growth, and frankly, it's hard to focus on more than say 20 to 40 accounts at any given time anyway. So it's fun because you get to pick your opportunities in a way that you really get to optimize for the types of businesses and kinds of customers that want to be leaders, right? It's I saw on social media this morning, but this quote that really landed with me, which is, to lead means you can't do something that other people are doing. So when you find a customer that's like, okay, well, who have you done this with before? Because I only want to do that if you've done it with others. Then by definition, they don't want to be a leader in the space. So you're finding those leaders that are ready to do something new in order to achieve something new.
Is that where, I mean, is that, so I think this is a good lesson for our audience. Is that the kind of company that you're landing with is early adopters or fast followers? Is that?
I think that's true. I mean, we certainly have some of our platform is very tried, tested, and true. We've been doing it for years, and we're continuing to build capability on top of that. And as we mature in the supply chain space, where we're going to be spending the most of our time with our enterprise customers, that product is innovating rapidly. And it's one of those things where it's not even necessarily that the company is doing something very new for us. We're a startup, so everything's new for us. But the big thing that we're seeing is the enterprise consumer products companies, consumer tech, even food, they're not used to leveraging the granular daily information that we're bringing to the fore. And so they see it, they know they want to do something with it, but they can't quite make the connection. Okay, here's how I convert that into dollars on my bottom line.
That's how they can't see how to get to the so what. So
right. So and then by definition, they don't have teams that do it.
So give us an idea of what Alloy. Oh,
yes.
sorry.
No, you're reading my mind.
Okay.
I think that's perfect.
Well, I think we have a good idea of who you're approaching, but give us an idea of the application, the solution, the business problems that you're attacking, because I think that'll help the audience tie it together. Who is early adopting or fast following on, and what problems are they trying to solve?
Sure. So the customers that are getting a ton of value out of our platform are customers that want to go out, they're brands that are typically selling their products on the shelf at retail, right? Maybe they have e-commerce, maybe they have direct-to-consumer. In some cases, maybe they just have a really strong B2B business. But essentially, they have really robust retail sales, and they're getting information from their customers, the retailers, about what's selling off the shelf by SKU, by store, by day. They're getting retailer forecasts, and they can see their inventory at the stores. They can see the inventory at the retail DCs. Obviously, they know their own inventories. They see the orders and the shipments flowing back and forth, so they have all this transactional information. And it's just this mountain of data. And they know that they should be doing something with it, right? They know sales uses it ad hoc. They use it to analyze promotional effectiveness for specific promos that they've run or new products that they've launched. There's some level of in-stock analytics where they're trying to react when they see that a store's out of stock of an item. You see supply chain CPFR teams; they're working closely with the retail teams.
Scott's going to ask you to define that.
Oh, sorry.
So for our some segment of our listeners, we love our acronyms in supply chain.
Yeah,
so
gotta have them.
Tell us.
Rein me in. So CPFR, collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment.
Awesome.
So these are the members of the supply chain that are really working closely with the retailers to make sure that those shelves stay full.
Yeah.
Right. And
so this was a concept introduced to retail by Walmart, where I think first with P&G, which is also one of your customers, but. We can say that, right? I can say that.
Yep.
Maybe you can't, but
we
I can
actually have a public video with them. But yeah.
But the goal was to combine and share information, which seems so natural today. Mm-hmm. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, when Walmart was doing this concept of collaborating between companies was absolutely unheard of. Mm-hmm. It was more trying to block your vendors from stealing your downstream customers, your consumers, and companies have finally realized that this sort of openness and sharing is really it's really accretive to both portions of the supply chain.
Walmart was definitely on the vanguard in terms of sharing this type of information with their vendors early, right? And what we've seen is that almost all of the major retailers have gotten on this bandwagon because a rising tide lifts all ships. Mm-hmm. They know that if they're sharing this information with the vendors are going to use it to improve their business, which in turn improves the retailer's business.
Yep.
Right? It's not really at the expense of anybody. What's interesting to me is you see the retailers getting more and more sophisticated with this data too. There was recently an article in the journal about how grocery is now getting so much value out of this information that they're basically lessening the value of the category captain role in store, and they're saying, I know that you are giving us great advice as a partner. However, we are now really good at using this information too, and we're going to basically leverage our own insights, and maybe it's going to be at your expense. So
another
please.
term, category captain. So these are, at least in my vernacular, these are the merchandisers from Frito-Lay or Coca-Cola or whomever who go in and say, you need 50 of these and 28 of those and 3,000 of these.
So I think they're going to play a really active role with the retailer in understanding here's what the assortment should be, right? Not necessarily these are the SKUs from my competitors you should carry, but this is how much product you should carry. Here are the price points we're expecting that the customers are going to want to be at for the different types of product.
Right.
Here is the breadth that you want to carry. Right, because these consumer products companies have such an enormous portfolio.
Especially now.
Yeah, especially now. And the brick and mortar is in a tough spot because the retail stores, they can't carry the kind of variety that you can get online. So they have to compete in other ways, right? Mm-hmm. But they also need to have the product the customer is looking for.
Yes.
And so the category captains are going to help in managing that for the retailer.
But the retailers are taking more initiative themselves, and they have a closer tie to the data that enables them to do so.
Well, they have more
they
data.
can actually advise these big brands and the category captains that, no, we don't need 50 of those. We only need 37.
Well, and they're also often carrying their own brands. Yeah. So they're often selling their own products on the shelf next to the vendors.
Right.
So, I mean, ultimately, I think where this is going is for you to be a competitive vendor in that store and to get that retailer to say, I really value the insights that you're offering, you need to have better insights than you've ever needed to have before.
Yeah.
Because you have to outdo the retailer who has way more data than you do.
Yep.
But there's a really key component of the information that you have that the retailer doesn't have, and that's what's happening at other retailers. So, the foundation of Alloy is essentially, hey, we can help you get all of this information from retail, and we can get it from all your retailers, and we can put it in one place for you. So now you have this comprehensive view of how your product is selling in all major channels. You can combine it with your direct-to-consumer business, your e-commerce businesses. We've made it simple to take, e-commerce data from an Amazon or a Shopify and look at that zip code level data and combine that with the zip code level brick and mortar sell-through, so you can see hyper-local sales performance regardless of channel. And all of that's phenomenal, because now it gives the brand something that they can bring to the table that the retailer cannot get on their own, right? So when you're making a case about why you want the retailer to behave differently, you have information that they need in order to run their business more effectively, and they have a reason to listen to you. That's beyond just, I know they want to sell more of their product.
Right.
And
it's part of the why.
You anonymize that data when you give them that analysis. So it's not like they know this is Walmart's data or any of that, right? It's just they have the ability to assess a macro view of the marketplace and how they kind of land in the marketplace.
Exactly.
Is that a fair estimation?
Yeah, that's very fair. So we're going to make it easy for the brand and the manufacturers to consume this information and present it back in an ethical way. That's not going to show one retailer how this product is performing at another retailer, because that would not be appropriate. Yeah. However, when I'm looking at regional performance and I can see this product is performing at a certain level and it isn't performing this way in your locations, and we have some theories about why, I've got hard data that supports it should be doing better. Or, gosh, you guys are doing something incredibly special here that I can't replicate elsewhere. Help me understand what you're doing differently. And then we can bring that either to other of your stores in different regions, or we can bring that to bear, to make this a stronger offering as a whole.
So, Tom, let's talk about part of our pre-show discussion was around the need to respond sooner and faster, including, I liked the quote you brought to the conversation, the right response the first time. Why is that important in today's environment?
So, so we get really excited about, when we talk about the granular data that's available, we're not just talking about SKU and store level data, we're talking about daily information. So for a lot of the major retailers, you can now get sell-through and inventory refreshed as of the close of business yesterday. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to start analyzing not just, hey, I'm out of stock and I'm losing sales and here's where, let's go try and force them to put more on the shelf, but it allows you to execute better in the middle of things, like in the middle of promotions, for example. So if I'm running multiple promotions and I'm starting to run dangerously low on inventory in key areas or with key products, I have visibility in the middle of the promotion when I still have an opportunity to do something about it.
Right.
Without having it have to be somebody's full-time job to monitor that data, right? Because now, even though there's reams and reams of information coming at me, I have basically machines that can go monitor all of this. I can give it some key insights about what to look for.
And find those signals that are important.
Those signals. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it's not just, hey, I'm going to be out of stock in a couple days. We're talking about being able to see, here is how the top quartile of my stores are performing. Where are my bottom performers that I know are executing this promotion? And let's send field agents out and arm them with the kind of information they need. Like, they need to have displays up in these stores. They've been sent the displays. They were sent the product. I see that it was on hand 2 days ago, but they haven't been showing the lift that our other stores are seeing. Did the display get set up? I can now give people specific stores. I can tell them which SKUs should be on those shelves, in what quantities, how many facings, how deep. And I can start to diagnose problems like, well, maybe that product didn't get to the store in time, right? And I can try to troubleshoot that instead. So it gives the teams an ability to execute with the information that supports the action they're trying to take in a way that they've never had before.
What is as I'm wrapping my head around what Alloy does, is the company and your solution a better fit for retailers with hundreds of stores? Are y'all working at folks with a handful of stores to the Fortune 500? What's that customer profile look like?
It's a good question. So first of all, the retailers that we're typically working with, they're not typically our end customer, but they are who we're getting our information from, the data that we're getting it from.
Gotcha. They're the customers of your brands,
exactly.
like P&G.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Else, right? Yeah.
So you go out, we're going to get the best data from your Targets, your Walmarts, your Best Buys, Home Depots, Lowe's, Costco, et cetera. So the kind of top national retailers in North America and globally, they have the most robust information available at really good levels of granularity to action off of. The customers of ours that are going to get the most value out of that, we serve two segments of the industry. We serve kind of the mid-market. These are companies that are going to be doing anywhere from, say, $5 million up to a few $100 million in sales. They are still relatively young companies often, or at least relatively small companies. So you've got teams that wear a lot of hats. For those companies, we're going to work really well in the sales teams and helping them execute, working with buyers and managing the execution, the actual supply problems that sales has to deal with quite often in those orgs. When you move up into the enterprise level, companies that are doing billion plus in sales, a lot of times you see those roles get split out. And so you have the sales teams very separate from marketing, from the supply chain. Supply chain's broken out between demand planning, supply planning, CPFR teams. And so you end up with much more siloed solutions in those existing companies. Where we find the most opportunity there is much more on the supply chain side. And so, the offering there is kind of unique in that where we focus on the sales story, understanding leaders and bleeders from a SKU perspective, top quartile performers, and making sure we have high in-stock rates to capture all the growth that we're seeing.
Right.
That's the story on the mid-market more so. On the enterprise side, we're selling the same products, the same razor to the same customers over and over and over again. Right? We're innovating maybe annually or more often, but we're rolling those SKUs over. And for the most part, I'm selling the same kinds of product repeatedly. So the opportunity there, even in the sales orgs of those businesses, is to execute better. And a lot of times the room for better execution is in the supply chain. And so where we see the opportunity strictly in the supply chain for those enterprise customers is in visibility first. And then how do we drive action from the information we're getting out of that visibility? So when I combine all this information I'm getting, I take all this retail sell-through information, inventory, I start to look at, okay, what does unconstrained demand look like? If I were in stock 100% of the time, how much would I sell? Therefore, how much opportunity is left on the table?
Yep.
And I translate that back to the retail DCs, to my DCs, my plants, my suppliers, and then I can synthesize all of that across my retailers into a view that shows me, okay, here's my health at each node, right? Each point in the supply chain, I can judge its health by how much product do I have, how quickly is it moving, what is my forecast?
Right.
So basically, how long is it going to last? How long is it going to last? Right.
Yeah.
What is my risk? And what's my appetite for risk?
Yeah.
Because, maybe I want to have 100% on-shelf availability, and so I'm going to carry 50 weeks of supply no matter what.
Right.
But find me the retailer that's okay with that.
Yeah.
Right? That's got room in the back to let you have 10 times what they would let any other brand have.
Because that's an exponential curve, right? I mean, if you want to, let's say you want to be in stock 97% of the time, it's an exponential change in inventory.
And cost, yeah.
Right? Not incremental.
Yeah, you look at...
You will more than triple your inventory usually to get from 97 to 100 or even 99.9.
Well, and you look at like a Walmart, they're going to manage you to a 98%. They don't.
Right.
If you're over that number, that means they're spending too much on
That's
inventory.
right. That's the way they're going to see it.
Right.
That's right.
But oftentimes you fall into this trap, right, where I'm not able to keep it on the shelf, which depresses my sales.
Yep.
My depressed sales cause their algorithms to forecast that they need to buy less product. They buy less product, my sales go down further.
Yep.
Because I have empty shelves.
Yeah.
And so if you're
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Yep.
And if you want to break out of that, you need really strong data to go to these retailers and say, listen, I understand why your algorithms are saying what they're saying.
Yep.
Here is data that supports what I'm saying. Let's try it. And if it works, then we've proven the premise. And by the way, we both benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful, right? And it's powerful to be. I think the greatest power that you guys deliver is the macro knowledge of the marketplace. Because a retailer can only see the possibility of their sales in terms of their perspective. But when you give them an additional perspective that says somebody's selling 40% more than you are, whatever that number is, that suddenly opens their eyes to a greater possibility for that product. And that, again, as you said, all boats rise with the tide. So
love it. Well, a lot of times we'll have customers that have their own retail. So we have customers like Bose or Valvoline that have their own channel to sell through. And it's not even necessarily I can show you, I'm never going to go to a Target and say, here's how Walmart's performing to make my case. Because not only is that unethical, but you're going to get doors slammed in your face.
Yeah.
Right? You need to be able to present a nuanced message in an appropriate way. And what you're trying to say is, listen, I know that this product can perform better. We've seen it. Here's aggregated information that supports my point. Here's specific information that supports my point. Right? Here is something very targeted that I'm saying my hypothesis is if we can push product to these stores in these quantities, you're going to see this. You're going to see this result. We're going to increase our sell-through by X. It's going to pay for it. It's going to justify it. Whether it's because we've identified those locations have phantom inventory, whether it's that we've identified that the DC isn't replenishing correctly, regardless, we have a hypothesis. We have a way to test it. We have a way to manage it and measure it in order to determine, was it successful? Are you going to trust me next time I say this?
Yeah.
All right. So before we take the conversation a little more broadly, right? I always want to say broader, but that's not a word. Broadly. Let's talk about where you spend your time. Clearly, strategic alliances, I heard, business development. Clearly, spending a lot of your time with current customers, prospective customers. Where else? What are we not thinking about where Tom Jones spends a lot of his time?
So, I obviously I'm going to try and spend as much time as I can with my customers, and basically, maybe it's not a great word for it, but evangelizing this message on the road, right? I want brands to understand that you can change retailer behavior as long as you have a message that resonates with the retailer.
Right.
They want people that can give them something new. Right? They'll give you the time of day as long as they feel like you're bringing something to the table. And that's what Alloy is doing, is it's giving you the information that lets them do their job better, because now you can do a big part of their job for them and they trust you to do it.
It's a defensible business case. Look, I've been a merchant at a retailer, right? A vendor that was valuable to me was not one who said, I know you can sell more. They were the ones who said, I can prove you can sell more. And what you're enabling those suppliers to do is create that defensible business case that says, I can prove that you can sell more. And that is so incredibly valuable to a retailer, because even P&G's SKUs are just a handful of the SKUs that any merchant is managing. I mean, I manage 4,000 SKUs in 700 stores.
And SKUs?
Sorry, stock keeping units, different items. SKU.
So for the folks that are listening and not watching us on YouTube,
yeah, that's right.
Greg was just picking up
all kinds of devices.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's valuable to me, because I can't focus enough. I personally, and even a retailer, can't focus enough on any vendor's particular product line, because we have, among the 4,000 SKUs, we might have 1,000 vendors. So it enables a level of effectiveness that is impossible, literally impossible for a retailer to achieve. But it does so in a scientific way by presenting this sound business case that allows me to have the confidence, or at least start with a level of confidence that I can build on to see that there's opportunity greater than what I see today.
I think one of the other things that we're doing that is really a big challenge on the market right now is convincing customers that the brands companies that are selling at retail that they can do this. Not just that the retailers will listen to them, but for a lot of our customers, when you come at them with this massive amount of data and you're saying, listen, I can synthesize this and I can give you insights, I can tell you exactly how to act on them and how to make money doing it. I can tell you what the demand side of the supply chain, what the supply side of the supply chain should be doing, how they should be interacting with sales. This isn't a muscle that they have. How they can leverage this SKU store day data in an effective way that allows these teams to collaborate daily on this information, right? I'm not saying that they don't have access to the daily information. I'm not saying that the teams haven't developed their own processes to use the daily SKU information. Mm-hmm. What we're doing that's different is giving them an ability for all of these teams to do it in the same place at the same time and act faster because they're not all coming to the table with their own report, right? So coming back to the question you asked earlier was, how do you react faster and how do you react the right way the first time? How do you react with the correct response, right? You've got to have the most granular data. You have to have had it crunched before you start using it, right? It's not enough to just run a report and then I'm going to process through my pivot tables and then I'm going to run my analytics on top of that. It's going to spit out some answers and then I'm going to try and understand them. No, you should come in the morning and the insights are there for you to go through, right? And then it's a matter of prioritizing. It's triaging the information because I guarantee you're a big company like a P&G or a Unilever, and you produce this report that says, okay, I want to see my out of stocks.
Right.
And I'm selling in 20,000 locations, and I have a SKU portfolio in the tens of thousands. That's going to be a lot of intersections.
It's not going to be a tweet.
No, I can't act on that, right? So what you need is that second question. The second question is, okay, well, I want to narrow this down to the ones that are actually losing me the most money.
Yeah, start somewhere.
Right. What are the ones not only that are presenting the greatest lost sales issue, and I want to prioritize by lost sales, but also the ones I can do something about.
Yep.
Right. If I'm losing sales because I have phantom inventory, okay, I need to send somebody to that store, or I need to pick up the phone and I need to make my case that that store is incorrectly counting the product in the back and on the shelf. If I'm telling them that it shows that they have 0 and there should be 1, they're not going to care. But if I can show them that they are losing $10,000 a week in sales because it won't replenish,
that will get their attention.
Exactly,
yes.
Exactly. If I have a team of field agents that are going out and doing in-store visits, and they have a prioritized list of actions to take based on the amount of value each action creates, then I am all of a sudden using these field teams multiple times more efficiently than I was before when they had a static list of actions.
Right. I heard, I think, helpful context for some of our listeners that may not be familiar with the retail environment. One of the world's leading beverage producers, I'll call it, I went and heard one of their continuous improvement leaders speaking, and he mentioned how, when a customer goes into a store and doesn't find I gotta do away with my typical terminology, right? We call all soft drinks in the South Coke, right? ABC Cola, right? And if the customer on their mind wants to buy an ABC Cola today, but to your point that the aisle is empty, right? That is a sale they'll never get back, right? It's lost for good, and I think that's important context for. It's not like they can rely on that customer coming back the next day when they've got product or 3 days later. That's just completely lost revenue. And that's an important thing to embrace when we're talking retail, right?
Yeah, I was reading one of the summaries that actually you wrote earlier, Greg. Demand is not just what's purchased; it's also what's desired and not purchased.
Right.
Right, and
that's your words.
Those are your words.
Nice, Greg. Yeah.
It's lost sales.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just the sales you made; it's the sales you lost.
Right, and we refer to that as true demand. It's unconstrained demand. And, I mean, certainly you need to make some adjustments, right? Sometimes if I can't find the 6-pack, I'm going to buy the 24-pack. Or I might buy a 2-liter.
Right. Or a different brand.
Or I might buy a different
brand. Yes.
Right? But you can make some assumptions based on, for instance, if you have SKU stored day-level data, and I can see that I was out of stock on an item, I can also see how the rest of my items in that category performed when I was out of stock on that item.
And you can make some extrapolations from that.
Right,
yes.
And I can do that in aggregate because now all of a sudden I have a very instant way of saying, okay, how did this category perform at all stores that were out of stock on this item? And so my sample set isn't one. My sample set could be dozens or hundreds.
Right.
And I can say, okay, I want to check that on this day, but maybe I want to check it on all Tuesdays over the last 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like I have this immense ability to pour through the data that I never had before.
Yep.
Right.
All right. So now let's go bigger picture, right? As we start to wind down the interview with Tom Jones, Regional Sales Director with Alloy. All right, so if you think of the global end-to-end supply chain community, although we've been told that end-to-end supply chain is dead, all things are circular economy, which we're big fans of. But speaking of losing terminology, I've said end-to-end just about 1 million times in my life. I'm going to have to strike that? Is that what you're telling me,
And
Greg?
not even for that long, right? I mean, it hasn't even been the end-to-end supply chain for that long,
good.
has it?
Excellent point. So when you think about the global supply chain industry, what one or two trends or topics or challenges or issues are you tracking more than others right now, Tom?
So, I mean, some of the things that we're really focused on is how much the retailers are sharing with the brands.
Okay.
Right? So the trend has been that retail is providing more and more data back to the brands to help them basically do the work that the retailers used to have to do. Right? So they're essentially outsourcing a lot of their supply and demand planning to the brands, and they're saying, you get to do it as long as you do a better job than we can. But now we have incredibly good tools to measure whether or not you can actually do a better job than we can. You're seeing retailers not only share information about sell-through, but they're sharing information about, did you deliver this to me on time? Did you deliver it to me in full? Right? Did you short ship me? Did you give me what I asked for? That's really important because as that access to information has increased, so has the penalties that are levied on the companies that aren't able to serve according to the benchmarks these retailers have set up.
Right.
So you're seeing increasingly more retailers levy these fines on brands that are unable to meet the requirements laid out by the retailers. So now all of a sudden it's not enough that I anticipate what demand is going to be. I have to do that in concert with meeting the very rigorous demands of the retailer, or my margins get even lower, regardless of what I was going to sell it for on shelf. And then we're seeing the continued globalization of this. So North America certainly has been leading the charge in terms of sharing this kind of data with their vendors. But more and more you're seeing the other regions catch up. Europe is very far ahead in this as well. And as the other global retailers kind of get up to speed with sharing, making it very easy to access this information and use it, you're going to see an enormous flood of data compared to even what we have now come on the market. And you're going to see these global retailers trying to leverage it all together. And you're going to see these global brands leverage it together as well to keep pace. So, right now you have a lot of different business models depending on which region you're going to market in, whether you're operating through wholesalers, distributors, whether you're replenishing direct to store, whether you have a direct to consumer business. You're going to see over time more standardization of these models as globalization continues, which is going to require a whole lot more power behind it to make it effective. But it also means there's a lot more opportunity to standardize, develop best practices, and scale it up super efficiently. So I think you're going to see more data, which is a prediction anybody could make. That's not going to be unique. But you're going to see even more opportunity come out of that as long as you're leveraging the kind of tools that can turn that data into not just insights, right? It's not just a reporting exercise, but really focused on, okay, it's not enough to know it. I have to know what to do with it, and then I have to be able to do it. So how do I prioritize against where I can actually move the needle?
Well put. Greg?
You're begging for me to say something.
Well, I knew after – look, I think you are like second cousins or third cousins. The space that Tom's speaking to is one of your areas of passion and expertise. So
well, if you move
down
one layer, right, they work with the brands and the manufacturers, right? If you move down one layer to the distributors and retailers, this is precisely the solution that my company, Blue Ridge, delivered and delivers to that tier of the enterprise. And the business problems, I'm probably look like I'm thinking, because I'm thinking. I'm taking notes here, but the business problems are not the same. The access to the consumer is vastly different. That's the differentiating factor.
Customers don't buy the way they used to buy.
Well, and the difference is that the retailer and the distributor have the transaction. You have POS, which is only slightly different, right?
Point of sale.
Point of sale. Thank you. Sorry. But the problems are remarkably similar, and this goes to a philosophy that I have, as and we talk about here frequently, is that I think retailers should spend more time focusing on what they're really, really good at, and that is the interaction vis-a-vis marketing and merchandising and product mix management, and leave the back office things that most core the leadership entities or leadership teams of most retailers really don't have that much interest in until supply chain has got a seat at the table.
Right.
They really are really very good at marketing and sales and merchandising, right, and category management. But this allows them to put more and more responsibility on someone who not only has their best interest at heart, I mean, arguably, you could say most vendors do nowadays. That wasn't always the case. But also has a larger viewpoint on the market as a whole. So it's interesting, this dynamic and how it impacts it. I think also to your final point, which is, take the data and do something with it, not just present it. I think that, I know that can go a lot farther. You guys are well equipped to be able to do that, to not just take the data and say, blah, here's what we found, right? Mm-hmm. But take the data and say, here's what we recommend. Or even, with the advent of RPA, which is automated process, right?
Robotic process automation.
Robotic process automation, right? So, thank you. I couldn't remember what the R was. That's embarrassing. But to take that and actually do it because you've got the parameters, you understand the business rules of the business partner or the company that you're working with. Well, that will be coming very, very quickly.
Well, I think you bring up a really important point, right? Because we are vertically specific. Basically, we're super focused on brands and manufacturing. It allows us to build into our foundation, basically the platform itself, the viewpoints and the way that you need to look at a business for this specific vertical.
Yep.
When you are a general purpose BI tool, for example, you're reinventing the wheel over and over and over
every
again.
Single customer.
And one of the interesting things that we heard back to kind of responding faster is the marketplace is changing rapidly. What we're hearing, we had a great customer, one of our best customers that we're talking to recently, and they said, before Alloy, we were really planning based on sell-in, the product that we were selling to a retailer. Mm-hmm. And that's what we based our planning on. We placed it on the orders that they placed, and we wanted to make sure that they were filled. And we basically we had to trust that they were going to get it out to the shelves the way that they do. Which is their core competency, right? Getting the products onto the shelves.
Yep.
And they said that when we were doing that, we were too late. When customers' patterns and behaviors were changing, we would be able to see them on the shelf. Once we had Alloy, we were able to see that behavior shifting, the demand patterns changing, and we can react now when customers buy differently. Instead of waiting until it flows through into an order, which could be weeks or months after the fact, depending on how much inventory a given retailer is carrying on shelf or in the DC.
All right, so Malcolm shot me a note. We have 17 folks lined up waiting to speak with you about their retail woes before you even leave Atlanta. So, Tom, this is clearly what I admire about this.
15 of them are consumers.
True, that's right.
Right. I mean, they're not even just the brands and the retailers.
What I like about this is you can tell, and listeners might not be able to see it as much, but they'll be able to hear it. You're passionate about this kind of stuff. You're on a mission.
I get into it.
You are. This will help. This will help arm you with the data that you need to grow your company, grow your sales, and
we got a million stories that I want to share too. I mean, we got so many great customers that are doing just amazing things with this information.
All right, so let's do this. Let's make sure our audience knows how to
find those stories.
Yeah. Well, find Alloy, which is getting less and less difficult these days as y'all continue to take over the world. But how can they find Alloy, and how can they connect with you?
So definitely come to our website, alloy.ai. We got a great site that our marketing team's put together, obviously. Lots of case studies, lots of information about how the product works and who we best serve. To get in contact with me, you can reach me on my LinkedIn profile, connect with me. I'd love to share more of the story.
Tom Jones, Regional Sales Director, Alloy, and I think you were going to mention you are going to be at a big event.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, so at the beginning of May, we are going to be in Orlando with the Gartner Supply Chain Symposium. And we're going to have one of our amazing customers, Ferrero, VP of Supply Chain at Ferrero, is going to be speaking.
Yummy.
With our CEO, Joel Beal, on stage Monday afternoon. And we would really encourage people that are interested in looking at, how does a company like Ferrero use a tool like Alloy to combine their inventory data with their distributors' data and the retail data to tell a picture or to tell a story that says, here's where the product needs to be, how much of it needs to be there, when it's going to sell, because they've got, when you've got a consumable, they are paying extremely close attention at inventory to make sure that it doesn't spoil and get thrown out in the trash. So, huge value story there.
Definitely. And that's going to be in Orlando, right?
That's right.
All right.
That is a hyper-focused supply chain show by
Mike Griswold
Gartner. Yeah. Even more focused than the old supply chain executive conference in Phoenix. So it's a great place for practitioners as well as
leaders.
Theoreticians, and leaders to meet up.
Yeah, I think they changed it to the Symposium so that they could have a bigger format, and they were just getting oversubscribed.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom Jones, Regional Sales Director with Alloy, alloy.ai, and of course find Tom on LinkedIn or at the Gartner Supply Chain Symposium in Florida coming up in April, right?
First week of May.
First week of May. Not bad.
Yeah, might be second week of May.
All right, good stuff. Tom,
we'll
pleasure.
put it on the show notes.
Yeah, that's
right. All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Pleasure to have you here in studio, and looking forward to checking back in on the Alloy team as we continue to. It's hard to believe we're by the time this publishes, it'll be March 2020.
Yeah.
Seems like the calendar just flipped, but nevertheless, pleasure to have you here.
All right, thanks so much for having me.
You bet. All right, so to our audience, be sure to check out our events and webinar tabs we've got at supplychainnowradio.com. Greg, we've got a variety of in-person and virtual events.
We're going a few places.
That's right. Really appreciative of our partners around the world, EFT Reuters Events, the Automotive Industry Action Group, Georgia Logistics Summit, DHL Resilience 360, Modex, and many more, including our stand-up and sound-off event where we're flipping the tables a little bit.
The script a little bit, where the panel moderators won't say as much. Just kind of facilitate. Think of it as seriously, think of it as a town hall.
Yes.
Except that you don't have to ask a question that a politician's going to answer. You can answer the question for them.
That's right. That's right. We might have to bring, for both of us, some 3M tapes, since you're from Minnesota, with 3M in there a little bit to keep us focused on the audience.
Or Velcro. As long as we're talking 3M. That way, at least we have the flex.
There you go.
Yeah.
But, check us out at supplychainnowradio.com for these events, including this interactive global forum that we are hosting and facilitating. And if you can't find something that we talked about here today, shoot a note to our CMO, Amanda, at supplychainnowradio.com, or hit us up on Twitter at Gregory S. White and at Scott W. Luton. We like our middle initials for some reason.
Our parents gave them to them.
That's right.
Us, I guess. That's why.
Big thanks to our guests here today on Supply Chain Now, Tom Jones with Alloy. Fascinating to see what they're doing. Lots of passion. Big mission they're on. And as we mentioned, they're getting easier and easier to find. They're everywhere. They're taking over. Invading Atlanta as we speak. To our audience, be sure to check out other upcoming events, replays of our interviews, other resources at supplychainnowradio.com. Find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. On behalf of the entire team, Scott Luton here, wishing you a wonderful week ahead, and we will see you next time on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.